This episode of the Better Every Shift podcast is sponsored by The Fire Store. Learn more about getting the gear you need at prices you can afford by visiting thefirestore.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Better Every Shift podcast. I am Jason Coy, Fire Chief in Laramie County Fire Authority. I'll be your guest host today. Zam will be back next week, as always. I'm filling in because this is a great opportunity to have a little chief talk, chief-to-chief chat about an interesting topic, and that's the changing role of the job, especially for fire chiefs. And as we look at the fire service as a whole, everything seems to continually change, but the role of the fire chief has drastically changed. Our guest is retired Assistant Chief Joanne Lorber. Chief, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great, and thank you for having me on, and especially talking about this, I guess you could say, hot topic
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
going around.
Also joining me as always is the commander, Janelle Foskett. Janelle, great to see you, and looking forward to your insight on this topic. You've been around the fire service a long time also.
Yeah, it'll be a great discussion today.
Chief, you recently wrote an article for Fire Rescue One titled A Fire Chief's Playbook for Managing the Evolving Nature of the Position. And you outline in a great detail many of the elements of the fire chief's job. It's like Chiefing 101. It's a great article. For any chief or soon to be chief in our industry, and really anyone who wants to know what it's like to be the fire chief. A lot of times you hear statements like our fire chief is disconnected with the line or is not, doesn't know what they're doing, but truly we all came from the line and our hearts lie in the line. Chief, would you mind just giving a little bit of your background for us in the history of your fire service career and education?
Okay, briefly, let's see, 28 years with Fort Lauderdale Fire Rescue, retired last January, so I'm still kind of new to this retirement thing. Got hired as a firefighter medic and worked my way up, driver engineer, lieutenant, captain, battalion chief, and assistant fire marshal, emergency manager, and then finally assistant chief where I retired. And let's see, education-wise, we have bachelor's and a master's degree, both public management and administration. I have my executive fire officer, my chief fire officer credentials. My certified emergency manager, got to have that in there. And I also am a graduate from the Naval Postgraduate Executive Leaders Program. I think that covers about everything.
That's awesome. Education, you entered in as a paramedic firefighter, but I assume that education, all your graduate and degrees, all happened throughout your career. Is that correct?
Yes, thankful for tuition reimbursements.
Yeah. I think that's one of the roles of growing into those leadership roles is education and the importance of it, correct?
Correct. I'm very grateful for a division chief when I started. I mean, I really wanted to be a veterinarian, so I had a lot of classes to be a veterinarian. So I've gone from four-legged people, animals, to two-legged people. So he actually pushed me to go back and finish my degrees in public management and public administration. So grateful for him.
Outstanding. That's well, I would attest that probably the things that you were studying in veterinary actually probably really applied to dealing with firefighters too. So
Kind of, sort of.
Exactly. Chief, when do you think there was the biggest shift in the nature of the job in history, or specifically your career? When did you see changes being impacted at the chief level?
Definitely, I got hired in January of 1996, and for October 1996, we were going to start transporting EMS. So when I worked for the ambulance prior to that, as a part-time gig, as a stepping stone, and worked in private sector in the hotel and in the hospital, and also work in ambulance. So I would probably say the late 80s, early 90s when EMS started coming in, and everybody was like, oh, the focus, maybe we should start transporting. And yeah, this is where it's going. Fires are down. Well, in some areas, fires are down, but in our area, fires are down. And waiting on an ambulance to come across the county was just not really worth it. And they said, let's expand. And that's where I think it's all started, moving in towards EMS.
Yeah. When you look at EMS as a paramedic and then growing into your chief officer role, what do you think that major trend of adopting EMS services and transport, how do you think that truly impacted organizations, not just in the call volume, but in the response times, et cetera, but culturally, how did that change the organizations?
Oh, that was a big learning curve for a lot of people because at least the department I worked for was fire, fire, fire. And we had a lot of naysayers of, no, this is going to be horrible. We're not going to do this. We're not making money. And, oh, no, we can't do this. We're firefighters. And that's the whole thing is like, we're firefighters. Or as they put it, we're firemen. So, and it's like, no, we're firefighters. And guess what? We're moving into this new world. I mean, we had a lot of EMTs working and a couple of paramedics like that were there way before I started, but it was just, oh, okay, yeah, we're here and we'll help you lift. But it was a big crux. And then we thought it was going to be divided. It was like, oh, the EMS side and the fire side, but we worked it out and we're together. So still carry bunker gear on our ambulance, on our rescues, ambulances, whatever you want to call them. So those people jump in and go to the fires too. So
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, um, especially 25 years later now, we look at how we're trying to reel back from some of those EMS programs because of now the overburden or oversaturation that leadership's having to deal with, right? Between callbacks, brownouts, blackouts of stations, liability, all these things. As a chief officer, uh, through your career when you became assistant chief, did you have to deal with any of that type of stuff in the Fort Lauderdale Fire Department?
So when I became assistant chief, my fire chief at the time put me over Homeland Security and special events. And it was right about 2018, 2019. And then, of course, COVID hit. So it was a little hard. And definitely during special events, trying to find people to work, details. And it was to the point where I had to start opening up because we're ALS. So we hired a lot of paramedics. And then it gets to the point where we were oversaturated in paramedics. There's less people going to school to be paramedics, and I think I'm noticing that as I'm doing consulting around the United States, there is a paramedic shortage going on, along with firefighters. People just don't want to do this job anymore, and still trying to figure out why. So that might be an article somewhere down the road of why, but I'm not there yet. But it's hard, and now I've heard stories from my department now they're hiring EMTs. So we're going back to the EMTs and hopefully putting them through paramedic school. But it's tough trying to get people. And we have a lot of people that are on ALS engines that really don't want to be on there. They just want to be on rescues. So we have those type people where they just want to be rescue type people and not firefighters. So I know there was a department I just did a consulting project with, and they just got handed, it was like, congratulations, you're doing EMS starting tomorrow. And they're like, oh, wait, we don't even have enough people. And the thought is, well, maybe we need to start hiring non certified firefighters to put people on rescues and ambulances. So in fire departments, that might again start that wedge again that
Yeah,
we've overcome.
yeah, there's a lot of discussion around the country based off the size of the organization, the geographic location of the organization, how EMS impacts it. And as chief officers, you're trying to balance all those pieces when most of us signed up to ride the big red truck and respond to calls. But as a chief officer, now you're being tasked with having to have a crystal ball to look at how do we best serve our community.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's interesting. Janelle, we were at the Science to the Station conference, and we had a little conversation after one of the presentations about the overworked engine company or station where they're running 25 calls a night. Can you shed some light on maybe some of the conversations of how organizations are addressing that overworked group?
Yeah, one of the stations, Contra Costa County in Northern California, they did one of the presentations, a Fred talk at Science to the Station, where they talked about how they're doing this really unique shift schedule where they're basically taking folks from the busiest calls where they might be going from 20 calls a shift to they basically get transferred to a different station for a month long period. So they're not moved there temporarily, but it's like I believe the speaker said they call it kind of like going to the spa. It's like a month away at the spa where you get to relax a little bit, and it can just kind of let you reset, regroup. So it's not just this high intensity all the time. I thought that was a really interesting way of addressing some of these issues. Chief Lorber, I'm curious what other types of programs like that you're seeing or have seen maybe in the past 5, 10 years that seem to be successful.
Well, funny you said that because we used to do that. Like you would do a rotation on the rescue. Your Kelly Day to Kelly Day, you'd be on the rescue. Then they'd move you to an engine or a slower station, and then just kind of rotate you around the district. So we used to do that. Unfortunately, now, and before I left, and I hear now, there's no slow stations in Fort Lauderdale anymore. So we can't just move people around. Plus, we also have a bid system, and we have our specialty teams that have their people. So it's really rough. But word on the street that I've heard is now we're looking at, instead of our 24/48s, we're going to the 24/72 shift. So now they're looking at hiring a whole new bunch of people and a whole new shift. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. And I know, like, from I think it's the Midwest West, those 48/96. I don't know how you guys do it because I know when I worked 48s, my little butt was dragging at the end of that 48. So,
That was
especially
one
if I
of
was at a
the
busy station.
that was certainly one of the hot topics of the show. It felt like every conversation I was in somehow went back to shift schedules and
Mm-hmm.
the discussion about, oh, 48, 96, 10 years ago was like the end all be all, like, we're going to try
Yeah.
this, and now it's 24/72. Jason, did you have any conversations about shift schedules?
Yeah, I think great conversation here about the ever-changing role of our chief officers. How do we balance that? So, Janelle, you're exactly right. 4896 for the last decade's been the buzzword. Every organization that's a career organization was striving to get to that because we thought it was going to be great, right? And our concept is that for the firefighter that they get to go home, have days off, they can live farther away, et cetera, et cetera. But in reality, it's placed a higher stress level on many organizations. It's placed more fatigue, more call outs, more sick time, a lot of stuff there. So if we stay on the topic of chief officers, how do we balance that? And Chief, you in your article, you talked a lot about the expanding role of the chief officer. Um, how, as a firefighter that goes to school, earns their degrees, grows in responsibility, ends up being a chief officer, how do you continue to be fluid with that ever-changing role of responsibilities that's placed on you?
No, that's a really good question because I sit back and I think about my career and it was like how, as I moved up, it was more responsibilities you get, and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to balance all this? And forgot to tell you, I also am a contract instructor at the National Fire Academy if and when they open again. So I teach EFO. So the first class is all about self, and the second class is organization, and the third's community. So I teach the self and the organization. And my bringing up, and most of everybody, I'm sure it's like that work life balance that you have to do. Well, now we're teaching people it's life work balance. So now it's you focus more on your personal life than work. So it's a new switch in everything. So trying to get the chief officer, like at my age or a little younger, to flip that and say, no, we actually have to start working on our life and we're on family instead of the job's going to be there. And I've had to learn that over the years that tomorrow, the work I didn't do today, it's still going to be on my desk. It's not going anywhere. Nobody else is going to do it. So, and I've learned to empower people, and that, I think that's probably the biggest thing that fire chiefs need to start doing is trusting in their people, promoting the right people into positions so they don't fail, and then trusting them and empowering them to take some of the workload off of the fire chief. I mean, he or she cannot do everything. And they're going to have to start delegating down. And it may be a battalion chief level, it may be a captain or a lieutenant that's got the niche in some topic. But we need to start letting our other people do our jobs. And we got to start focusing at the bigger picture level, the 30,000 foot, as they call it, level, getting off the dance floor as Heifetz and Linsky,
Yeah.
leadership on the line there.
Little
It's
EFO
an
there, huh?
interesting
Yeah,
contradiction
little
of
EFO.
sorts, right? Because it's, focus on life work balance, but
Yeah,
also we've expanded your list of responsibilities tenfold. So
correct.
it's sort of a mixed message, right?
It is. And that's where I really think that we need to start delegating and empowering people to start handling some of these things. I know if I was the fire chief, and there are days I still think about it, there's no way if I look at that list, I can do everything. I mean, yes, I'm at the top of the pyramid, but definitely have people below me list do this, report to me. Let's have meetings and schedule meetings. I don't know if every other week. Hey, give me an update of where we are in case I go somewhere and somebody hits me with this question. We need to start empowering people. And that again goes to the succession planning and mentoring down the road as we're going to get into, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Chief, you think about that, you look at it, and not only the empowerment piece of it and the workload enhancements over the last 20 years, life's changed a little bit for us technology wise too. And Chief, I've run into you
Oh yeah,
numerous times at National Fire Academy with the grants program. It was interesting that we were like, I know you from someplace, but where?
yep,
But as you sat there reading grants, and as I did, our phones were going off, our emails are going off. We're connected back to our
constant.
organizations, yep, more than we've
Yes,
ever been, right? And so if you
constant.
don't hit some of those pieces that you discussed in your article, you're going to be overwhelmed and you're not going to be able to step away at all, correct?
Correct. I mean, I've been in positions because I was the major grant person, and it was rough when we had grants. I mean, I try to set up my schedule, but I had no backup. And I've tried over years trying to get somebody to back up me up, and I was like, no, no, no. And you get to the point where you're going on vacation, you're bringing two cell phones, you're constantly checking emails. People are still calling you, and you're like, I'm on vacation. They're like, yeah, but you're the only person that can answer this question. And you're like, we're good until I come home. But everything is like the constant, I need it now. It's like, no, you really don't need it now. It's because nobody talks to anybody. That's another big thing is lack of communication throughout the departments.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that because we're more connected now than ever through social media and phone,
Hmm.
etc. But yet we don't actually communicate any better. Well, how do you think accountability and transparency? What's your suggestions for those up and coming chiefs? How do they deal with the influence of social media technology? All the different apps, etc.
Oh, well, as we've all seen, if you guys get the Google alerts on fire chiefs and other people on firefighter issues, social medias are it's it's good and it's bad. You have to definitely have social media policies. of what you can and cannot post. Ethical decisions really comes into a lot of it, of saying, okay, my mom always used to tell me, if you can be in the newspaper, on the news, or whatever else, you don't want to be there unless it's positive. But mostly social media is always negative. And that's another thing. You have to be on top of things constantly. And if you don't have good policies, and I would say get a PIO team together, or somebody that you could trust, whether it's a civilian, it's a bunch of firefighters that you trust, and of course, ethically train them to do this. Monitor social media. I mean, I've done IA for about a year, and there was an backdoor secret things on Facebook that I didn't have access to, but people brought it to you, and you're like, okay, I never saw this coming. So where you think you're monitoring social media, you're really not, because there's backdoors to everything else. So you have to figure out somehow a policy on, hey, stop posting on these backdoor things. If you need open door communication, if you have a problem, come to me and talk to me.
You think about it 20 years ago, 25 years ago as a fire chief, you might have to worry about what somebody said at the local establishment or what they said in the
Mm-hmm.
supermarket. But they didn't have a forum to say things negative or positive about your organization or you as a chief. You mentioned earlier before we started the podcast today that you had an attorney with the fire department that was basically in your hip pocket. Do you
Correct.
think that was the case 20 years ago or 25 years ago with the fire service, or do you think that's a new revelation as a chief officer having to deal with legal counsel?
We've always had the legal department, and I think more the legal department probably in our past was more geared towards with fire prevention on building codes and things like that. We had special magistrate where they were doing code enforcement and things like that. So they were more geared towards that, and then maybe reviewing our SOPs or SOGs when we would do it. But now there are a lot of things that you're actually talking to your legal department on, discipline, this, along with HR. So you have this whole now broader perspective of, okay, I really need legal, and codes change. Nobody knows. State fire marshals come up with new things. And by the time it dwindles down to you, you're like, oh, heck, I'm like 2 years behind this. And I know down here we've had issues with trying to do sprinkler renovations in the old condos and everything. And it's, well, 2025 they're going to have it, well, 2024, and it's like every year it's pushed. And because condos have lobbyists,
Yeah.
and they're just like, nope, nope, we're not doing it. So you have a whole broader perspective on people for you and people against you now, and that's where your legal system does actually help you.
Well, speaking of legal, this is kind of a perfect conversation for us to be having today because Jason, you had a meeting earlier, you were at a hearing, and again, so appropriate because when you became a chief or were potentially dreaming someday of becoming a chief, did you think that you would need to essentially be a lawyer in some cases? And can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go back to dreaming of a fire chief. I'm not sure that any 5-year-old dreams of being a fire chief. I'm not so
Good
sure that
point.
most 35-year-olds dream of being a fire chief. But it is a necessary role. And over the generations of my fire service, people talked about, I don't want to be fire chief. I'll tell you, it's one of the most rewarding positions that you can have in the organization because you get to see people grow and you get to see organizations grow. It can also be one of the most frustrating. So I don't want to deter anybody from being a fire chief. The irony, Janelle, as you brought up, is that, yeah, I had a hearing today centered around industrial growth in our region, and with that, they treat those like a hearing with motions and exhibits and opening statements and closing statements. And so the question was asked when we became a party to this development, do you want legal counsel or are you just going to represent yourself? And I thought, well, heck, I can just represent myself, not knowing that you would have to write legal documents. The funniest part about it is my brother's an attorney. And so I always got to rub it in my face that I have a really cool job and I get to do all this fun stuff and all these things. But yet here I found myself sitting in a court proceeding as a pretrial hearing today thinking, I didn't get a bar or go to the bar or get a attorney's license. But here I am having to do it. And so, Janelle, long story or long answer for your question. I think the role of the fire chief and executive teams of our organizations has evolved significantly over the last 25, 30 years. And the burden has been placed on us to have legal counsel like Chief Lorber was talking. And if you don't have legal counsel, I strongly suggest getting legal counsel for your organization. If you're in a smaller organization, at least have somebody on retainer to do those things because you need their specialty skills. Because as a fire chief, just like Chief was saying, we can't do it all. We have to empower other folks to do it. So I learned a valuable lesson through this process today.
The Fire Store, equipping protectors with passion. Every decision we make is about you, our customer. We understand that having the right gear can mean the difference between life and death. Our goal is to get you the gear you need, when you need it, at prices you can afford. This holiday season, listeners receive 10% off now through December 31st with promo code FRP10. Visit thefirestore.com for everything but the truck. Now let's get back to the show.
Well, on that note, I'd like to ask both of you, I'd like to kind of tick through some of the topics from your article, Chief. And what I want you to be thinking about is which one has surprised you the most, where you never thought that this would be something you'd be worried about. A lot of it, is more just it's part of the job, but when you stack it up and you see just how much is in there, it becomes overwhelming. So,
Yeah.
on that note, okay, we've talked about the changing nature of emergencies, obviously, but certainly the shift to the focus on terrorism, MCIs, pandemics and other public health issues, climate change, now artificial intelligence, cybersecurity issues, a heightened focus on decision making rooted in data. Of course, personnel management has always been part of the job, but now there's such an increased focus on making sure the health and wellness of members is really attended to. DEI issues, succession planning, always recruitment retention issues. And then, of course, budget management, grant management, community expectations, CRR, stakeholder, and policy advocacy. That's a lot when you put it in a list all at once.
Mm-hmm.
Is there one of those that has jumps out to you the most in terms of the biggest
Well,
shift for you?
well, they all kind of jumped out. To be honest with you, I got this idea of the 21st century fire chief when I was at the National Homeland Security Conference this year in DC, and it was more geared towards Homeland Security and police and other groups and things. And I was like, they're like, well, how are we going to handle the 21st century of this, this, this? And I was like, that's a good spin-off for a fire chief on what he or she needs to know because it's upcoming. I would probably say the biggest thing that jumped out of it. We all know about data and decision making because everything's going towards data. Our local officials and people above us all you want something, show it to me in data. So I think we're okay on the data. AI is the new animal coming out, as I guess I could say. But again, AI is good for, again, data analytics. So, I mean, I've used it a couple of times on certain things, and I'll tell you, it's pretty accurate to a certain point. I mean, I have to go back and check things. Cybersecurity, I think we're always going to have cybersecurity issues because as we look at it, all of us are going towards iPads and everything else for our EMS transports, for our fire reporting systems. So if we get cyber attacked, do we actually have plans? And that's again working with your IT department. And again, if you're in a smaller jurisdiction, I'm not quite sure if you even have an IT department out there. Jason, I know you're in a smaller area.
Yeah, all the points that you make in your article are right on, right? And you talk about data, and I think especially coming from your brainchild of the article stem from that Homeland Security event.
Mm-hmm.
Law enforcement for decades has done great at capturing data, sharing data, marketing data. You can't
Oh,
sit
yeah.
through a city council meeting or a community meeting where law enforcement, where they're not producing a percentage of crime or a statistic compared to a like-sized community someplace else. Whereas the fire service, we haven't generally done that. Our data stems from, we ran 3% more calls or 17% more calls this year than last year, but we don't have any statistics broken down
Right.
the way we should, right? So I think your data analytics is one of the very expanded roles in that chief officer over the last decade or two, because now our politicians, our government bodies, and our communities are expecting us to produce that data. Yeah.
Oh, I've been to many homeowners meetings where I'm just sitting there, trying to explain when I was the emergency manager, talking about preparing your home for hurricanes and floods and this and that and wind mitigation. And up comes PD and out whips out his little, and we've had so many crimes in this area and this, and you're just sitting there, you're like, okay, I don't have that data.
Right.
And now, but again, it's garbage in, garbage out. So you've got to make sure you're actually working with proper analytical software. And I know the city I worked for, we had lots of data platforms and software this, and a lot of times they don't all communicate with each other. So, and then what PD has, maybe fire needs to have. So we need to start actually working together on data, because PD's going to a call, fire is also going to the same call, most likely.
Yeah.
We need to start sharing data, sharing information. Again, that cybersecurity, what if? Because I know PD works on MDTs, we worked on MDTs. I mean, our city got hit, I think, with Anonymous years back. I mean, we weren't shut down or anything else, but it's like, it's happening. And I think there was a place in a department in Texas, a whole city was knocked down. So for weeks, and we got to make sure we actually have plans for all this stuff.
Yeah, Chief, you bring up a lot, and in your article, as Janelle pointed out, there's a lot of new things that fire chiefs have to think about. What would your recommendations be to a new chief or a fire chief that's struggling to keep all those balls in the air? And how can they best prioritize everything that Janelle brought up?
Well, like my article is, it's like a checklist. So as the fire chief, you have to sit there and figure out what's your top priority. And it's of course keeping your boss and local government or county government or whoever you report to abreast of what's going on in your department. But a lot of these things, yes, you need to know, but I'm going to go back to start empowering your deputies and your assistants and having them start doing this. And it gives them a chance to actually get up in front of a commission meeting and speak. And then having them go out there, they're your best people to make. You can't attend every HOA meeting. You can't attend every other business meeting. You're doing what you need to do because you're the figurehead of the department. You need to start trusting your people and getting out there. And that's the best way I could say is juggling all the balls. Yes, but they all come back to you so you know what's going on. But you're not the one that's got 25 balls and 5 plates and 3, I don't know, Halligans in the air at the same time. You need to start focusing and delegating down. That would be my best suggestion.
Perfect. I'm going to give a little selfless plug for you to take a second about the EFO program. As chief officers grow, I would assume you'd recommend getting the EFO program. As a recent graduate of that, one of the most beneficial parts of that class was an assignment to go speak with a clergy person from your community, a politician from your
Hmm.
community, a business person community. Tell me about why you think the EFO program, for one, helps guide new chief officers in juggling those tasks, but two, talk about your passion for that program.
That passion for the program. Well, going back to the that assignment, I think that's the third class for community. So it gives people that aren't the fire chief or maybe a deputy chief or a battalion chief, because the program is open to a lot of different ranks. It gives them the opportunity to actually go and speak to somebody else, because all they live in is, and a lot of people just live in this little fire service world, and that's all they know. They don't go to conferences. They just live in their little department, and they think, I want a new Halligan, I want a new truck, and I snap my fingers and it's going to happen. No, you need to talk to people, and it gives you an opportunity, because I remember I did this in my master's program. I had to go interview my mayor and had to interview one of my commissioners. So they're elected positions. They're not promoted into position. They're elected. So you have to talk to an elected official, and their perspective on the fire department is very, very tiny compared to the big picture of the city, the county, or whatever the heck they're in charge of. And when you talk to the different people, you realize that the fire department is just a small little piece of the pie, in the big pie. And I think that really opens a lot of people's eyes about the EFO program, because it's basically helping you develop as a chief. Even if you're a brand new fire chief, it gives you different perspectives in life. And there's another program out there, FESD, with the IAFC, that actually fills in other little gaps that you don't know about, that the EFO program doesn't cover. But both programs, it's an eye-opening experience. Especially, a lot of people don't know how to communicate and ask questions, because I know with the EFO program, the new program, we get them up and talking a lot. And Jason, if you went through the new program,
I did. Yeah, it was the pilot program.
oh, God bless you.
Yeah,
I've
thank you.
heard stories about that program.
Yeah, the 2-year program that took me almost 6 years. So
Yeah, I mentored in the fourth class when they're doing
yeah,
their capstones, and there were a lot of people that were probably in your co-pilot pilot class that just graduated. So
yeah,
I felt their pain. I'm the old ways, so we didn't have to do a lot of talking until I won that outstanding research award, and Chuck Burkell made me go up and do a lot of presentations on it. So that was about the only talking. So, but with the new program, they definitely have to talk, and it gets them. We actually criticize them on how they do their presentations. So it actually gets them going, and they don't even realize that they have little ticks or things that they do. And it's like, you're speaking to your council people. Stop, clicking the pen or fidgeting with your pocket. So it does help people. And then
yeah,
there's the managing officer program. So that's for the younger officers. So I suggest, captains and lieutenants go through that program.
yeah.
Well, speaking of empowering your members, I want to go back to the delegation piece for just a second. Chief Coy, you've talked about how just in it, with all the things that you're involved with through VCOS or Fire Rescue One, you do a lot of traveling, and you feel very lucky that you have such a solid team. Because when you go off and travel and do speaking engagements, you've got a solid team back at the department. And I'm curious from your perspective, kind of how you got to that point and what advice you would have for other folks who might struggle with the delegation piece of it. And just that comfortable mindset with that and learning to let your people lead.
Yeah, well, the comfortable mindset is smoke and mirrors, because we're always uncomfortable, even when we're in house. Uh, my first 3 years here as a fire chief, it was a one-person show, and I was the only full-time employee. I was having to build a team. I had a vision for the future. And I remember a conversation with my dad saying, you can't work the number of hours you're doing. You're gonna burn yourself out. I was working 60, 80, 100 hours a week. I was responding to every call. I was trying to run an academy by myself. I was doing all those things, but I had a plan. And the plan was to find the people that complemented me with their skill sets that filled in the gaps of my weaknesses, which were a lot. So it was easy to find people that fit gaps in my style of leadership. But by building that team, one person at a time with specific intentional purpose, I was able to build a team of leaders that they run our organization. All I do today, 12 years later, 15 years later, is massage areas that are there, but then also protect them from the political body and the challenges that are placed on them. So I become that barrier of protection. And at the same time, they protect me on the backside by making sure all the little details are done. So to do that, to be able to have the fortitude and good fortune to be able to be a part of VCOS and be a part of FR1 and to go speak and to even take a vacation, you have to entrust and you have to distill your values organizationally and personally into those folks that are around you so that they lead with the same common vision that you would have if you've been there. Now, that's not micromanage them. And that's a lesson that I learned early on is as soon as I started micromanaging one of them, they basically said, hey, you hired me to do this job, let me do it. And so learning how to massage their direction without them feeling like they're micromanaged is also a key skill that chiefs have to have today. And as Chief Lorber talked about, the fire chief can't do it all by themselves anymore. And I used to teach in the state of Montana, and I'd go visit fire departments 3 or 4 nights a week. And you would get there, and the fire chief would have to be the one to pull the fire truck out or start the fire apparatus. You couldn't get them to let go of those responsibilities because they were afraid they weren't going to get done right. And so overcoming your own internal insecurities and ego are extremely important as you grow into, whether it's a company officer or a chief officer, so that you can have time to breathe and see the 30,000-foot perspective. Chief?
I definitely agree with that because there are a lot of leaders that just don't want to let go on. I mean, they're great operational leaders, but sometimes when it comes to administration, not so good. And they can't let go of things. And I think that's the hardest part for some people is to let go of some things and getting the right people. I mean, know your strengths, know your weaknesses. And if you may have a strength, but your weakness is more, get people that fill that weakness around you and listen to them. And there are lots of times that you need to be very humble and accept what they're saying. I mean, you may think they're wrong, but they're actually right. So there are times that as a leader, you have to accept that you're wrong and be humble and just accept and move on and say, you know what, you're right. Ultimately, you do have the overarching decision to make, but bringing other people in, especially that one devil's advocate bringing in, sometimes put you back on the right path because you might be thinking you're doing everything right, and all of a sudden you have a squirrel moment. You're going down another path, and here comes this devil's advocate and says, "Hey, whoa, chief, listen, I think you're going the wrong way," and they pull you back.
Yeah. No, Chief, you brought up a great point about you're the fire chief or a chief officer. You're not the chief firefighter anymore. And a lot of times we get stuck. It's easy to get stuck in the fireground tactics and what equipment we're using, what color gear, what style helmet. I mean, we could talk about that all day long, but that's not our responsibility anymore, right? As you advance up into the ranks, you're now having to look at a different perspective, a different angle. If we go back to the EFO, we're putting on a different lens to see our organization because that's what's needed from the leaders at that level. Would you agree?
I agree. And I think maybe the hardest position as a chief officer is that move from lieutenant cap or captain to battalion chief. Now, because these were your buddies and these are your pals, now you actually have to let them do the work and you're not actually in there with them. And I think that's probably the hardest position. And then again, that operational to administrative flip. A lot of people just are not administratively geared to do that kind of job. And there's a lot of help. I mean, I'm not saying that they can't do it, but you have to really work harder with them or teach them and listen, okay. And when the tones go off and you're working upstairs in administration, you're not running to that fire anymore. You have to let it go and say, I trust my people. And that's another thing where tones are going off and people are still running out the door because it's the big one. It's like, okay, who's going to run the fire department in here? Okay. we need to keep it rolling.
Yep. Chief, as you're now retired and that's a new transition and challenge, well,
Oh, yeah.
that's a whole nother article and story. But what would you say to inspire young company officers to promote to battalion chief, or young battalion chiefs to promote to the office? Because we hear a lot, I don't want to leave shift, I don't want to go to a 40-hour work week. But in a broader spectrum, including combination fire departments where maybe they work a full-time job, how would you inspire that next supervisory role for someone to take?
I'm kind of big into, hey, sit in my seat with me for a day or two, and I was so pro into once you get promoted to battalion chief, okay, yeah, you're going to be on shift, but you know what? Come upstairs and work with the different administrative personnel. I would love to see that happen. It didn't happen in my career, but I think that gives them a learning perspective. I mean, they're on probation, so they're on a 6-month probation. Rotate them through the different departments so they actually get to see. They learn how to do purchasing. They sit with logistics because, again, like I said, sometimes we need this object because we saw it at a conference and we need this new widget. And, snap your fingers and we're going to get it. No, you got to learn how to do the procurement process. I think they just don't have the perspective of knowing what they do, as they call it, them in administration. So bringing them as they're getting promoted up and like, just spend a week with me, spend 2 weeks with me, see what I do. I think that would give them a better perspective and gives them that, okay, I kind of like that, or I want to do that. And I think that would help bring aspiring people up.
Yeah, absolutely. My parents were teachers, and before you can go teach, you have to be a student teacher. You get to
Right.
share that experience, right? And there are some student teachers that after they go through their student teaching say, I don't want to be a teacher. And some that say, this is absolutely my passion. Why don't we, or should we, provide that work on the job work experience to show what chief officers have to do? I think it's a great idea, Chief.
I do too, but again, now we're going to fall back to staffing issues.
Yeah.
So it's like that double-edged sword. You want to mentor them, you want to bring them up, you want to train them, but then you're going to have staffing issues. So I would say that's probably a great discussion to have with your city manager, or whoever you're reporting to, and saying, and your budget personnel saying, listen, this is my goal. I want to do this. And can we figure out, maybe putting a budget towards this? I think a line item budget would probably help.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been great, Chief. You have a quote in your article, modern fire chiefs must be visionary leaders, astute managers, steadfast advocates for their communities. Can you expand upon that real quick for us?
Well, vision today, the fire service is ever changing, and you have to think outside of the box now. I mean, really seriously look outside of the box and look at your community. So we're getting our community involved, and we have to listen to our community because things change. I mean, where you think, oh, I can say knock on wood, we haven't had a hurricane this year.
Don't say that. I fly to
Okay,
Florida on Tuesday.
we're good. Season ends at the end of the year, but word has it that it's season's done. But you know, okay, if we only focus on hurricanes, we have floods. All of a sudden, lately, we've been having a lot of flooding. It's that 100-year flood, 500. We can't count on those anymore. We have to be a visionary, look for the future, and just kind of move on and just think outside the box. Being the fire chief, and okay, we're going to have fires and we're going to run EMS. I mean, my department is now doing whole blood. I hear they're going to start doing ultrasounds. We have a MIH program. We have to keep looking for the future because it's the only way we're going to stay in business. And I hate to say it that way, but we have to. And stay steadfast and just keep moving forward and bring everybody along with you. Just don't keep the vision to yourself. Again, we're back to that word communication. Communicate it all the way from the top down to that boots on the ground firefighter of what your vision is. And listen to them if they have any ideas, because communication goes up and down. I think we need to really focus back on that.
Janelle, thoughts?
I think those are all great ideas, and I just so appreciate your time today, Chief. One thing I wanted to reiterate is, at the beginning of the show, Jason mentioned that your article is like Chiefing 101,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's so true. We're going to have a checklist of your article available for download. So please, if you want to pop over there and download that, just clearly this isn't something where you can check the box. I
No.
worked on MCI planning for the year. It's not like that, but it's just to make sure that you're thinking about that it's top of mind, and maybe that you've delegated or worked with a team to figure out what your plan or your policy is for that. So look for that checklist, and it'll expand on some of these topics a little bit more and get into some of the nitty gritty in there. So thank you so much for all of this.
You're welcome. And actually, now that I have this article, I'm thinking about how I could input this into the EFO program or give it to the FESD program and saying, hey, this is what you all need to start really focusing in on of this is coming. And I did have a comment when I posted it to Lincoln. It was like, man, you're spot on with this. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, and I'm a retired person, and I'm telling you, being retired is not that easy.
No.
Because you kind of miss it and you kind of really want to keep your hands in it. And I'm grateful for consulting that keeps me involved and seeing different things, and I'm learning different things. And I know we were talking about scheduling. There was one department I heard spoke with. They do 11 a.m. they start at 11 a.m. So this way it's less traffic. They can take kids to school. And I was like, never thought of moving the hours just to 11 a.m.
Yep.
I mean, they work 4896s, and they get to sleep in that extra couple of hours before they go home. So, I mean, they may be onto something.
Yeah, there's a lot of topics, and you hit on it, which is thinking outside the box and being that visionary chief. Great stuff. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom with us through the article, but also
Very welcome.
here today. Thanks for everybody for listening, and you can always email us at bettereveryshift@firerescue1.com if you have comments, thoughts, questions, you want to see a topic. If there's anything you want to talk about, please feel free to email us with that. And as Zam would say, now get out there and learn something, do something, share something to make you and those around you better every shift. And for me, I always want to honor our traditions, but we have to lead change for us to continue to be successful and grow as fire service and serving our community. Thanks, y'all, for joining us. Thanks, Chief, for being here. And Janelle, as always, great to have you on board.